This here is a Walmart bag full of graphics cards. Yeah, so there are 4 graphics cards in here, all of them broken, and I know for a fact that 2 of them have incorrectly flashed VBIOSes, so we're gonna see if we can fix those 2 at least. The other 2 are just marked as bad or defective, and I don't really know what that means, because it's possible these are irreparable, at least in this office setting. I don't really have the tools to reball a GPU, for example, or a memory chip, or whatever might be defective with these. I'm not sure. And that's why I figured, what the heck? Let's document the process. What's the worst that could happen, apart from making myself look like a fool? So let's see if we can fix them. Stay with me. To get rid of that annoying Windows activation watermark, head on over to VIP SCD Key and purchase a Windows 10 Pro OEM key for a fraction of the price of retail. Just use a secure payment method like PayPal, enter your product key into your PC settings window, and say bye-bye to the watermark. And be sure to use our offer code SKGS for a sweet discount. So let's see what's in the bag, shall we? This first graphics card here is a Zotac Gtx 1050. All right. Card number 2 is a fairly, oh, okay. Shroud's all screwed up on this one. Might, wow, this thing's really jacked up. Are the screws missing? Okay, the little mounting brackets for the screws are broken, and that means we're probably gonna have to do a bit of super gluing and maybe a bit of cleaning as well. This one doesn't look very pretty. Now these 2 Sapphire cards, I believe, are the ones that are incorrectly flashed. So these are RX 480 4GB variants, and again, I'm not entirely sure what the histories of these cards are. I think these were used for mining, and I mean especially in cards of this caliber. So the first step of every troubleshooting process, by this point I'm sure most of you know if you've been watching our earlier videos, is to attempt to replicate what is described by the owners of these components. In this case, of course, just my friend owns all of these, but he told me that none of them work. He gets a picture out from none of them. So we're gonna see if that in fact is the case. It's very unlikely, but still possible that maybe he just had a broken system, or maybe he didn't slot the cards in all the way. We just need to do that bit of due diligence before we spend any more time attempting to fix these. If they're not broken, there's nothing to fix. We'll start first with this GTX 1050 here from Zotac. But before that, I want to power this system on here and make sure that this system works as is. There's actually an integrated graphics processor in this CPU. This is a Ryzen 5 5600G. So we've plugged the HDMI cable directly into the motherboard here. We're going to run off of integrated graphics. This will allow us to confirm that the platform itself is suitable for testing. Otherwise, it's just not going to do us any good to plug potentially dead cards into an already dead system. So with that, let's power this on and confirm that we get a post. And there we go, looking good. Not that I'm all that surprised. This is a brand new system sent from NCXT's BLD service. I'm not even gonna get like too far in depth into testing these. I just wanna see if they work out of the gate. Once we confirm that they do work, if they do out of the gate, which I doubt, or if we confirm that they're broken and maybe we fix them in this process, then we can stress test them and make sure that they hold up to higher loads and higher thermals. So that's kind of like the next phase. I just wanna see if we can even get these systems to boot with these cards and get pictures out through them. I'm assuming, since this is the first actual time I've turned on this build, that it's just gonna be setting things up for Windows. And yeah, okay, so if we can get to this screen through the graphics card, that's a good sign. So let's get card number 1 in here. In this case, again, it is the Zotac GTX 1050 that I believe doesn't send a picture out. We might not even get power on if the card is that screwed up. Not gonna bother screwing it in, there's no point. Let's see if it posts. Make sure the HDMI cable is plugged into the discrete card this time, and we'll power the system on. See what happens. Okay, yeah, so there we get no signal. And we'll connect it back to the discrete card, the 1050. This one shows a source. This is HDMI. It's not saying no signal, so it's receiving something from the card, but obviously we've still got a black screen. So it knows something's there. There's just obviously not enough data being sent through to create an image on screen. So, okay, well, at least we know that the card's not totally dead. Ugh. Let's see, I don't really see anything wrong with the backside of the card. I don't see any leaky resistors, blown capacitors. It actually looks really clean back here. And as for the other side here, let's take a quick look. We've got the fan cable to worry about. I don't see anything right off the top that looks like it's blown up. So that's good and bad, because it probably means that something is wrong with the GPU itself. And I can fix those. So I just don't have the tools, the equipment. Very expensive, and you don't run into this kind of issue every day with cards. I'm really starting to wonder now if this is just a case of a bad HDMI port, because again, like I said, everything on this board looks actually really good, really clean. And it's not like these 1050s suffer from like crazy amounts of power influx. I mean, they're relatively weak cards. So it's strange that just the GPU would crap itself this early in the game. So now I'm gonna try running things through the DVI port on this card, and no, there's no heatsink attached right now. No, it's not gonna be a big deal as long as the card doesn't stay on for too long. It's not gonna be under serious load. It will heat up and eventually throttle. Could potentially damage it if we left it on for a long amount of time, but we're just checking for a post. That's literally it. And if this card's already bricked, I mean, we're not really doing any more harm to it. I imagine it will be the GPU if this doesn't work here. It's unlikely that both the HDMI and DVI ports are bad. Make sure this is plugged in all the way. These DVI ports can be a bit finicky. But yeah, I'm not seeing anything. Golly, what the heck? I wonder if the card's getting hot. So switching over to the thermal cam, I noticed the GPU is definitely a hot spot. Not that we should be surprised. It is typically the hottest component on a graphics card when it is powered, even though it's not under load. You can see that it's already approaching 50°C, and that's surface temps, not internal temps. So package temps are likely much higher than this already after just 30 seconds or so of being on without a heat sink. But I'm not really seeing excess buildups of heat in areas of the board that we otherwise shouldn't. So I don't really see an indication that there's a short anywhere. I don't see any blown chips or anything that would be heating up unnecessarily. The card, it's probably just got a defective GPU, which again sucks because it's the one thing I can't really fix here. The entire board is immaculate. Again, I don't see any issues with any SMDs anywhere. The power phases look really nice. This is probably just a case of a dead GPU. I think we're gonna have to move on to the next card and call this one a day. I think what's so frustrating about this one is that when I try to test it, even through the DVI port, I can see the screen like turn on. Like again, it knows there's signal there, and I see the HDMI icon up top, which only shows up when it's receiving some sort of signal from the source, but it's not actually displaying the picture we want to see. It's just, again, a black screen with the backlight kind of fading in and out. So, I mean, it wants to work so bad, but I think this card is beyond saving. So let's move on to the Zotac 1060 now. Now this one is a bit of a basket case because it has a broken shroud. That said, if we can get this card to work, I mean, despite the shroud just kind of hanging here, like we can fix that. I'm not worried about this. We could just super glue a bunch of stuff together. It looks like it was already super glued at some point, but I'm not entirely sure how effective this is gonna be. I'll kind of have to make sure the fans are angled up. That way we're getting some active cooling. And all right, let's give it a shot. What's gonna happen with this one? Who really knows? My gosh, this is just so jank. It's just, the shroud is just hanging there. Well, the fans aren't even spinning. Oh, that's not good. This card, oh, hey, this one works. Ha, we're getting picture out. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so just a dead shroud, which honestly shouldn't be that difficult to source, especially on eBay nowadays. So many people are like parting ways with some weird stuff. Like even if we buy a broken 1060, just like this one, we could just take the shroud off of that, put it on this card, and we'll have a perfectly working 1060 again. That's really cool. I'm not sure why the build reset itself. Maybe it's, oh, okay. Interesting. Hi there. Let's get a few basic things out of the way. What's your home oh, okay, so this is the startup screen. It just looks different now. Not bad. All right. Oh, okay, so this is actually pretty obvious here. The fan shroud isn't connected to the main board, which is why it's not receiving power. Also, if you notice, I didn't have the 6-pin, the supplemental 6-pin connected when we first started this up. I did connect that just to verify the card still works. Some of these cards, you can actually run just like basic things without the supplemental 6-pin. I don't recommend this. You won't be able to run games without it, but I went ahead and connected it here just to be on the safe side and ensure that that it wasn't like, the fans weren't working because this wasn't connected. They're actually not working because, yeah, the fan header is blank, and for some reason the shroud is just kind of hanging here by a thread. So we're gonna take this card apart, clean it up, get this shroud back together, see if we can just super glue some things down. Maybe I find an extra few screws that we can use to mount the shroud to the heatsink, and then all should be well.
A few moments later.
Holy guacamole. Okay, so these two screws here are stripped beyond belief. This card's definitely been opened because these two screws were very loose and these two were very tight, very difficult to get off. But these final two screws here closest to the camera are completely stripped out. There's nothing to grip on at all here. I might have a solution for this, but yeah, that's just totally rounded out. Oh man, this is gonna be really tough. I'm gonna have to get I'll get some tweezers with little serrated teeth on them, and I'll see if I can grip around the sides of each of these and try torquing them around that way. I don't know if that's gonna work or not. And then to that end, you know, retightening, it's gonna be another can of worms. So let's see what we can do. Let's try these needle nose pliers. I think we're gonna have to grip it real tight and be super careful around these SMD. Oh, look at that, it's turning, nice. Nice, okay, so we can actually disassemble this card, that's good news. Make sure the SMDs are okay around it, and these resistors, a few capacitors, they're all good to go. All right, that's awesome. Let's try this one. Might be a bit tougher. Oh, it's turning barely. There it goes. There we go. All right, so this one now, we can just come from the top, I think. And twist it the rest of the way off without slipping and destroying other parts of the board. That would be great. Oh wow, I've honestly never had to do that before. So that is that's an experience right there. Also, we are missing some thermal. Jesus, who went through this card before me? I know it's not my buddy. He's real good about this stuff. This is something else. There's just like chunks of thermal pad missing, like outright. This one's obviously for this one. These two are stuck here. This one, part of it is still there, and then these other three are just completely gone, nowhere to be found. I don't think I have replacements for these either because they're all different thicknesses, different consistencies, so it's difficult to get that right. But yeah, we might just have to go without it for now, and I'll just tell him eventually he'll need to add those. I'm not sure how hot these GDDR5 modules get in 1060s, but obviously you want to have them if possible. On to cleaning this stuff up then. Start with a thermal paste. This paste actually looks pretty fresh, and that is just another indication that this, again, has been opened before, which would explain why. We've got screws that were so torqued on, they were almost stripped, and I think everything else in this card, golly, it's going to need to be deep clean, more or less. I'm not going to spend as much time as I usually do in the PCDC series in this card, just because that's not really our task. We wanted to make sure that these work, and, well, this one does. It just needs a bit of TLC. That is so much cleaner. Let's scrape these thermal pads off. We'll try to clean these best we can, being very gentle and applying just a bit of IPA to each. Ooh, these are stuck on there. No way. That's where these pads went. So they had pads over the areas here where you can see extra GDDR5 chips can be added, but there's obviously nothing here to cool. These should be over here because this is where the chips are. So that's interesting. I'm not sure if this is a 3 gig or a 6 gig 1060. Let's see. It is a 6 gig. Okay, so each of these GDDR5 modules is a single gigabyte of video memory, and you can see that technically the board would support up to 8. These extra 2 are blank though. So that's actually good news. It means we can move these over where they need to be so that each chip gets some form of contact with a thermal pad. Worst case, we can just apply thermal paste atop each of these chips. It's probably not going to make the best contact. Typically you want decent amounts of pressure when using thermal paste, whereas with pads they tend to be a bit more resilient. And they work especially well if the heights are all different, which these likely are. They're different heights than the GPU die itself is. But if we have no other alternative, I suppose we'll have no choice but to use thermal paste. So we'll see. We have 4.5 pads and we have 6 chips. So we're gonna have to do some splitting up here. Gosh, this board though, it is disgusting. I don't think our quick and dirty solution here is really gonna be enough, but at least this card will be in better shape than when it arrived. And who knows, maybe the fact that this was so dirty and nasty was partly responsible for whatever the owner of this card said was creating issues. Well, we just tested it and it seemed to work just fine, but we haven't really put it through its paces yet. So after we reassemble this, we'll probably run a benchmark or two just to see whether or not the card holds up. Get all up in these ports. You never know, this could be the reason why he was getting spotty connection before. You know, I really tried with this thing. I took it outside, blasted it with water, tried to get a lot of the dust and things out in between the fin stacks, and I also took my electric duster to it. It's just, there's a lot of corrosion in here. You can see, especially down in here, there's a lot of caked up corrosion. It looks like this card was running in a very like humid environment. I mean, look at the discoloration on the back of this here. It's really gross. The only thing we could do is probably lap the surface, and that just doesn't really make sense, because by then we'll be spending so much time on this for really next to no performance difference, because the cold plate looks to be intact mostly. My only concern really is the aesthetic play here. I tried cleaning up the fan shroud as best I could as well. You can see that here. All in all, I mean, it looks fine. But I think at the end of the day, if you were this concerned about aesthetics, what you could do is just swap this cooling solution out for an aftermarket one. Arctic makes some really good ones, single fan and dual fan, that would fit this 1060, no problem. So let's go ahead and reassemble this thing. We're gonna repaste the GPU, although I expect temps won't really change too much because it did look like fresh thermal compound was already applied. That's probably a bit too much, but it's not gonna hurt anything if it runs over. These thermal pads, I mean, they're in rough shape, but at least we have them, and we can actually place them in the correct locations this time. And here is the finished product. Again, not the cleanest. I definitely could have spent a bit more time, but some parts of this card were just unsalvageable. You can see plenty of staining and corrosion and whatnot. We did actually get the cooler adhered. You can see I can hold it by the cooler, nothing's shaking around. It's actually quite tight on there. And I solved this issue by, using zip ties. You can see a zip tie there, a zip tie here, and on the back side we've got a zip tie right there and another one here. So when in doubt, and if your screw standoffs are broken, just use zip ties. I mean, it's good enough. You know, this card's not like worth thousands of dollars. I don't know, in some markets it might be. I maybe spoke too soon there. But I'd say, considering how old this card is and how rough it is in terms of shape, I think it'll do. Now, we need to plug this thing into the build and make sure that it still works. So let's go ahead and slot it in. And this time we won't forget our supplemental 6-pin connection. And let's go ahead and connect it at the rear. HDMI port goes in, and let's go ahead and power the system on. See how she fares. Let's also check the fans. I'm curious if the fans are working. Yes, they are. Fantastic. So it was literally just a matter of the fans being disconnected. They work just fine, so there's no need to buy a replacement. Unless, again, we wanted to start fresh with some like Accelero card or the twin turbo shrouds that Arctic sells. We could definitely go that route. But for now, it seems to be working just fine. Now, I will follow up probably in a pinned comment. I don't want to do all that in this video because we still have 2 other cards to tackle here, but I'll follow up after running some more intensive tests and let you know whether or not the card stood up to those when we run some like gaming benchmarks and some burn-in tests to make sure everything is stable. All right, now for these last 2 graphics cards, by the way, we're getting into the end of day 2 now. This has been taking quite a while to film. I have run into an unexpected issue. So neither of these 480s is detected by our VBIOS flash software. This is the one that you always want to use for AMD. I'll have it linked below if you're interested. Essentially, these are so bricked that they're not even being picked up by the program. And what that means is we're probably going to have to jump the BIOS chip, which should be on the back of these cards, which is why I have the back plate removed on this one. Again, these 2 are identical. Might as well do like a quick visual inspection as well, just to make sure there's nothing else wrong with the card, because I'm not sure if when it's fully bricked with a bad flash, the fans are supposed to spin or not. They're not spinning. This card looks completely dead. It's not even getting hot. I mean, it feels like ice cold. So I don't know what's going on. This is definitely outside my wheelhouse, so I don't usually tamper with things like VBIOS, especially on cards that don't have dual BIOS support, which these of course don't. So let's take this one out and have a quick look at it. So everything so far in this card looks pretty good. There was one chip, I think it was right here to the left of my right thumb. This chip was slightly dislodged, so it wasn't making contact with the pads below. I'm going to fix that with my soldering tool real quick. I'm not going to solder this, but I can heat it up. I have a little heat gun I can use to kind of liquefy the pad a bit and then get this to stick again. I'll take care of that. And then in hunting for the BIOS chip, it really sucks that there's not much support here. I can't find online which chip it is. I think it's this one. I'm pretty sure it's this one. It could also be this one though. I suppose it could also be this one up here, although usually they're pretty close to the PCIe slot itself. So I'm gonna jump this one, pins 1 and 8. Let's give it a shot. But first, we've definitely got to fix this chip here and get this thing soldered back down to the pads.
2,000 years later.
So I've tried multiple attempts now to jump this BIOS chip, and it doesn't seem to want to post. Basically, this kind of tricks it into limp mode. When the card first receives power, it runs checks through the BIOS, but if we jump the BIOS or short it, then it kind of bypasses that, and we should get VGA drivers or VGA picture out. We don't get any picture out. In fact, we still don't get any heat, nothing from the card. It's a bit ridiculous. I'm very frustrated. I've got my multimeter here, and I wanted to confirm that we were at least getting power. So let's see, 5 of these are ground, and 3 of these are hot. Should be 12 volt. Actually, that's continuity. Let's switch to, okay, DC amps. And look at there. That's about 7.5 amps. And we get that for all 3 of these pins, all 3 12-volt pins. So there's not much else I can do here. It's really unfortunate that this card is just bricked. I don't know what else I can do. I can't short the VBIOS chip. I can't get the card to be detected by the ATI flash tool through integrated graphics. It doesn't even see that a card's connected. The card is receiving power, confirmed with the multimeter, but it's not being detected. It's not being initialized, so the motherboard doesn't see it. It can't be found in the BIOS either as a connected device. Kind of a cluster. Oh, and might I add, this one is the exact same case. It's nothing. It just, no matter what I do, no matter what I try to jump, I just can't get this thing detected either. So these are 2 peas in a pod, and it really sucks. I was hoping to fix at least one of these. So our failure rate now is 75%. Thankfully, this Zotac card, even though it is kind of jank and it's zip-tied construction, I mean, this one works. So I can tell my buddy I fixed 1 out of 4. It's like, it's not a very good pass rate, but it's better than over 4, right? Well, this wasn't really how I saw this video going. I was hoping I could fix at least 2 of them, at least a 50% pass rate, but we're a bit worse off than that. So let's start from the top. This Zotac Mini GTX 1050, totally bricked. It wants to send a picture out. You can see that it is receiving some sort of signal via the HDMI port. Actually, we tried all 3 ports here, and they all did the same thing. So I think it is something at the GPU level itself, like the physical chip that we obviously can't fix here in the studio. So that is a bit unfortunate, but I'm not gonna junk it because I do think we can ship it off to somebody who might be able to fix it for us. This one here, this GTX 1060 Zotac card actually works just fine, and we didn't need to do anything super crazy to it to get it to work. It already pretty much was good to go, apart from the broken shroud that we managed to fix very jankily with some zip ties. We reconnected the fan header, or the fan cable, and everything runs just fine, with the exception of the 2 missing thermal pads for 2 of the GDDR5 modules, which we need to obviously fix at some point down the line. We just have thermal paste there for now, and I can see straight through they're not making very good contact. There's not enough pressure there for the thermal paste to be doing much of anything at all. So this one is like 90–95% there. It just needs a little bit more TLC, but otherwise we cleaned it, made sure that it works, good to go. Now these stupid RX 484 gigs, these are really driving me crazy because it should be a lot easier to fix these than we're making it out to be. For whatever reason, no matter what we try, we can't even get these cards to initialize. They will not boot up, they won't warm up. I know they're receiving power. Again, we checked with the multimeter, but they're not initializing. They are inactive in these builds. And as a result of that, we can't flash a new BIOS because the system in question doesn't even notice that a card is there because it is completely bricked. Literally, this is as bricked as a card gets from a software perspective. So I think the only solution now is to completely replace the VBIOS chip in each of these cards. I mean, if manually jumping pins 1 and 8 doesn't do the trick, then we just need to replace the chips outright. I don't have the tools for that here. I could probably get by, to be honest, with my cheaper soldering kit, but I'd rather send this off to somebody who does this full time, and I'll be sure to report back. I'm not gonna junk these, of course, because I do think that the hardware, for the most part, is good to go. We just need that BIOS chip replaced in each of these, and then hopefully they'll be working again. So check the pinned comment down below. I will be sure to let you know what the end result is for all 4 of these cards. This one you'll know about right away because I'm going to run some long-term tests with this very soon. But the remaining 3 cards here, the ones that are more or less dead or broken, we're going to have to do a bit more investigating kind of off-site, and we're going to have other people step in, hopefully, who can give us their 2 cents and let us know what they think is wrong. Maybe they can fix it, and then that would be a pretty cool kind of like on the deal, happy ending. But I'm not getting my hopes up. With that, if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to let us know by giving this one a thumbs up. That would be greatly appreciated. I know that YouTube got rid of the dislike button, and my take on that is, I think it's freaking stupid. They cited like mental health concerns. If that seriously is what's causing you mental like issues, you shouldn't be on YouTube. That's my take. If you can't handle a few dislikes, I mean, why are you on the platform? I mean, you're here for, you know, to kind of speak to an audience, and you have to understand that you're not going to appeal to everybody. And some folks are just going to show up just to dislike your videos. That's just part of it. So if you can't handle that, you shouldn't be here. That's how I see that. But of course, my opinion is irrelevant. YouTube also probably cited, I think, the fact that some advertisers were not liking the fact that they were being dislike bombed. You can literally disable the like to dislike counter on YouTube. I mean, if it's that big a deal to you, just disable it outright. Why do you have to penalize us? Because now people will hop onto these videos and they won't be able to see the ratio. They'll just see the likes, and that tells you nothing. Like, if you're gonna get rid of the dislike button, or at least the dislike public counter, why the heck is the like public counter still a thing? It doesn't do any good to anyone, because you need that context. You need that like to dislike ratio in order to gauge whether or not a video is actually viable, especially if it's like a how-to video or something. I don't want to be wasting my time watching a 10-minute video only to find out that it's actually garbage, or maybe it's clickbait, who knows? So yeah, there's my small little rant on that. I really hate it as a creator. I think it just is, it's a huge disservice to those of us who are largely informative in terms of what we deliver content-wise on our channels. It takes away a very important tool for us, and a very important metric for you all as well. So that said, if you want to leave a dislike, please do so. I still see the ratio. It is still important for me. It tells me whether or not you guys like these kinds of videos or not. Leave a comment down below. That would be appreciated as well. And I suppose I'll catch you in the next one. Sorry that only one of these ended up working at the end of the day, but maybe we'll have better success next time. My name's Greg. Thanks for learning with me.